Hey, how's it going? Dave 2D here. So Apple just put out a letter to their investors warning them of lower than expected earnings. And it doesn't look good, right? The revenue is down by like 5 to 9 billion, then lower than they expected. The stock price dropped like 10% overnight. It was not good news. But a hit like this does not destroy companies. A lot of publications are like, this is the end of Apple. It isn't, or at least I certainly don't think it is. Stuff like this happens, right? Stuff like this happens to big companies. And for a company like Apple, they're still one of the richest companies out there. They're still one of the most profitable companies out there. It's not that this won't have an effect on them, but I think this is going to be a huge wake-up call for the whole company. So Tim Cook mentioned a few reasons in his letter as to why the performance was poor, and I want to touch on a couple of them. He mentions the slower market in China being a big thing, and he also mentions the battery replacement program and the effect that that program had on iPhone sales. Now, if you'll remember, a little while ago, someone discovered that Apple was reducing the performance on their iPhones when they were reaching a particular age or when the battery had degraded to a particular state. And that was really controversial. Some people were like, hey, that's fine. Apple is trying to maintain the functionality of the phone by dropping the performance a little bit, but just making sure that it doesn't reboot. And other people were like, what? This is essentially planned obsolescence. They're making these phones slower to encourage you to buy a new one. Clearly, when you reduce the performance of your older iPhones, more people are buying new iPhones. And whether or not they did it with intent, we'll never know. But the fact is, people bought less iPhones this year because of that battery replacement program. Because you could just spend $30 and Apple would replace your battery, and now your old phone suddenly felt new again. Now, as for Tim's comment on the economy in China, it seems that people in China just aren't buying as many iPhones as they expected. And Apple is extremely dependent on China to grow their iPhone business because almost every other developed market out there is heavily saturated on iPhones. See, iPhone only sells flagship devices, but there's only so many people in the world that are willing and able to buy a $1,000 flagship phone. There's a finite number of people who want to spend that kind of money on an iPhone. So right now, in our market, phone companies are trying to push new phones on us so hard, like 5G phones, smaller notches, thinner bezels, better this, better that. But the truth is the user experience on our phones hasn't fundamentally changed in years. Like if you're talking about iPhones, the iPhone 5, or no, let's say the iPhone SE, so like the one that looks like the 5, that has a very similar experience to the newest, latest, and greatest iPhone XS. It's a lot cheaper, like the XS is $1,000, the iPhone SE is probably like $200, $150, but they both run iOS 12. I still have to charge both of them at night. Whether you have a $200 iPhone or a $1,200 iPhone, the user experience is fundamentally the same right now. If iPhones want to have better business, doesn't matter if it's in Asia, China, or anywhere else in the world, they either have to make way better phones or way cheaper phones. Those are really the only two options because all these iterative changes that they've been doing year on year just isn't cutting it, and you can see it in the numbers. Those sale figures do not lie. Now, I want to talk about one last thing. It's the iPhone XR. This is a phone that launched at $750, and the reviews of it were decent. No one really ripped on the phone. Like the initial impressions were a little weak with the screen resolution and stuff, but people enjoyed the phone, and I think a lot of people thought that for $750, you're getting decent value. The problem is that when people buy iPhones, when people want that Apple luxury brand, they want the real iPhone. They don't want like the derpy version that they offer once in a while, like the iPhone 5C and now the iPhone XR. People want the good. They want the real iPhone. So people just don't buy the B-tier phone. And I think this is something that Apple will adjust in their game plan going forward. And that's really the whole message of this video. The earnings warning is bad news, right? Obviously, no one wants to hear that. But I think Apple is a company that is smart enough that they're going to make some big moves. They're going to make some big shifts in the direction of the company, the roadmap of when they want to release things, how they're going to do things. They're going to change because there's no way that they're going to ride on this and just watch the company tank. There's no way. I'm excited to see what they do. It's interesting that this panned out the way that it did, but I'm interested to see what you guys think. Like, is this what you expected? I personally don't think it's the end of Apple. I know some of you guys do, but I'd like to hear your thoughts. Okay, hope you guys enjoyed this video. Thumbs if you liked it, subs if you loved it. See you guys next time.